New face driven in large part by the rise of the alt-right. White supremacists believe the white race is in danger of extinction. They feel like they're being replaced, blaming non-whites for their national economic troubles.
White people should have the same treatment as any other groups. We should be able to stand up for ourselves.
Middle-aged and overwhelmingly male, white supremacists have moved from online activism into the real world. This is Barbara Perry, director of the Center on Hate, Bias, and Extremism, who says white supremacy has a new, more subtle look.
They're not wearing the white robes of the Klan, and they're not wearing the black leather jackets of the skinheads. Many of them are white-collar workers. They're well-educated, they're sophisticated in their use of technology, they're sophisticated in their language and their construction of narratives. So the movement really has changed its face.
In the U.S., public white supremacy events have increased by 123% since 2016. By 2018, the number of known hate groups in the U.S. rose to its highest level in 2 decades, pushed by a combination of political polarization, anti-immigrant sentiment, and social media platforms that spread propaganda online.
What is different now is people are more empowered to come out with their beliefs, thinking that it's become normalized because of various factors such as the Trump election in the States, the rise of nationalism throughout Europe and Brazil and throughout the world.
And sometimes it could have deadly consequences. A man murdered 50 worshippers and critically wounded 9 more at 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand on March 15th.
These are not lone actors. They acted individually, but they're shaped by a greater collective of which they're a part.
The guns used in the mass killing were decorated with the names of several violent white supremacists. Experts believe there is a trickle-down effect when it comes to feeling emboldened.
When people turn on the TV and they see constant battling between the left and the right, they see Trump saying openly racist things on CNN, and they're feeling enabled that they too can now come forward and share beliefs that they previously thought were embarrassing or shameful.
Hadigan is a former white supremacist who helped shut down the Heritage Front, one of Canada's most powerful white supremacist groups in the 90s.
Unfortunately, with the advent of the internet, somebody can recruit from 2,000 miles away. The message propagates faster than anything we've ever seen before.
Recruiting tactics are ruthless. She says they befriend those with low self-esteem, the people who feel like they don't belong. Hadigan immigrated from then-communist Romania as a young girl. Her father died, and her mother was abusive. She ended up in a foster home.
So I was 16, just dropped out of high school, and really angry and alone, and didn't have a sense of belonging, didn't know who I was. And one day I was watching television, and I saw a guy, clean-cut man in a suit, talking about what's wrong with being proud of your European heritage.
She was soon the face of the organization, a clean-cut, innocent-looking European girl.
I was groomed very quickly. Within a month or 2, I was speaking at rallies. I was paraded in front of the media as a spokesperson for the organization, and I was taught how to recruit other people.
The trick? Find a person's worst fear and let it fester.
Maybe they lost a scholarship to an Asian student, or their girlfriend left them for a black guy. Whatever it was, I was taught to figure it out and go in for the kill.
The message is this: hate is self-preservation. Hadigan says today's hateful messages are now disguised as free speech.
It's a move that I call going from the boots to the suits.
Looking back historically, the Ku Klux Klan emerged in the late 1800s and re-emerged in the 1920s, where public lynching and racial terrorism was common practice. It comes back again in the 80s, except this time with neo-Nazi influence from white power skinheads. Experts say the last wave is where we are now, where mostly white middle-class men who believe the rights gained by immigrants or other minorities is a sign of their rights being taken away.
While they're fighting for free speech, the messages can actually reach vulnerable people, people who are more at risk of not understanding the difference between reality and fantasy or conspiracy. And those people will take that message to heart and feel like they have no choice but to go out and kill people.
Robert Gregory Bowers killed 12 Jewish worshippers in 2018. Alexandre Bissonnette massacred 6 Muslims the year before. And Dylan Roof murdered 9 Black Christian parishioners in 2015. The problem today, Hadigan says, is that online recruitment and hate speech is difficult to shut down. Speaking as a former white supremacist, she says all she ever needed was to be accepted.
The problem is when we don't have conversations about immigration, about the changing demographics. Those conversations are happening in echo chambers among websites and people who are hateful. And unfortunately, we have to confront that with facts as to why we need the immigration, as to why diversity is a strength and not something that is corroding people and their, and their fears. Thanks for watching.
Whites in America deserve our own nation. I know that it's very likely that I will lose my life. I knew that when I got involved in this.
Here in Boston, tensions remain extraordinarily high, and there are no signs that America's two fronts in the new political fight club show any signs of standing down.
Get the out! Get the out, Boston! And what's up? Get the out! I'm not getting sprayed by these Nazi racists. We seen what happened in Charlottesville. If I gotta die for my nieces, for my nephew, for white babies, for black babies, if I gotta die to see them have a better life, then I'm a dead mother.
All day long, we've seen individuals that the crowd thinks are Trump supporters or white nationalists, and all hell rains down on them.
You will be afraid! You will be afraid!
Thousands of counter-protesters here overwhelmed a planned alt-right rally, and the couple dozen who did attend had to be escorted out by police.
You regret comment? Go away! No, I'm looking for the... Yo, get moving, get moving, get moving!
But white supremacists across the country are re-energized after Charlottesville. So we've just arrived at the Southern Poverty Law Center. It's a group that monitors hate activity in the real world and now more and more online.
In all the years that we've been tracking, we've never seen this many of these groups everywhere. We've never seen their ideas penetrating the mainstream in the way that they are.
Heidi Byrick is the director of the SPLC's Intelligence Project. CBS News is the first major network she allowed into their secure facility where they monitor hate group activity online.
How worried should Americans be looking at this map of activity?
Well, I would say most Americans don't realize how much there is of this. There's more than 900 hate groups.
They define hate groups as organizations with beliefs that attack an entire people. 2/3 of the groups they are watching subscribe to ideals of white supremacy, and last week's rally in Charlottesville is considered the largest white supremacy march in decades.
You had militiamen, you had Klansmen, you had neo-Nazis, and one of the scarier things is when you have a united movement, right? That means something at the ballot box.
The number of hate groups has doubled during the past 2 decades, with spikes in 2000 after the census announced that white Americans would soon become a minority, and again when America's first black president won re-election.
So can you show us some of the specific individuals who are on your radar?
This, for example, is our profile of Matt Heimbach. He's been involved in white supremacy forever. If you had called me 10 years ago, I would have told you that the white supremacist movement in the United States was dying. We have a whole layer of millennial leadership in the hate movement that has come out of nowhere in the last 4 or 5 years.
The Southern Poverty Law Center says 26-year-old Matt Heimbach is the new face of fascism. He was one of the main organizers of the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, which he considered a success, despite the fact a white supremacist allegedly murdered counter-protester Heather Heyer.
So Charlottesville is a win.
Stunning victory. The best Bigly.
So in the run-up to Charlottesville, there's energy, you're adding members. Why?
Well, we have energy, I think, because Donald Trump's election showed that the majority of white America, especially working class America, believes in sovereignty.
I'm going to run through a list and you tell me yes or no if the term describes you.
Sure.
Okay? White nationalist.
Yes.
Neo-Nazi.
National Socialism is built on eternal principles, so the idea of new...
So maybe Nazi.
That's a slur that was developed by Jewish newspapers in Germany in the 1920s.
He wouldn't admit to being a Nazi on camera, but he believes in their ideology.
Your enemy is the international Jew, and we cannot avoid that.
And what he's doing is repackaging what many see as old-fashioned white supremacy.
So, scanning the pictures in Charlottesville, it was obvious that a lot of the people holding the torches were wearing collared shirts, polo shirts.
Yep.
It's not a hood and a robe. Has there been some sort of a concerted rebranding of what it is to be a supremacist?
Well, the dry cleaning bills are a lot cheaper, so that's a good thing.
He tried to dismiss that with a joke, but his hateful ideology is anything but. He denies the Holocaust. He wants to create an all-white nation. And this fall, Heimbach says he is beginning to recruit candidates to run in local elections.
As Adolf Hitler said, he who controls the youth controls the future. And that is so true when it comes to our situation.
We're going to be running for your local school board. We're going to be running for your local county council.
What's the point of that?
Being able to have an influence in the local community, to show that nationalists can have better governance than the two broken political parties.
Only about 1,000 people have joined his political party, but the idea that white America is discriminated against is growing. In fact, nearly 7 in 10 white American workers without a 4-year college degree or salaried job, along with a majority of the public overall, believe the U.S. is in danger of losing its culture and identity.
Anytime a country goes through demographic change, it's difficult. We had a hard time in this country digesting people that we now consider white, but we didn't back in the 1900s. It is entirely possible that that's what we could face here, right? A full racist backlash in terms of policy and everything else against people of color in this country.
Do you think we're going to see white nationalists openly running and potentially winning office?
Maybe. I expect more of these people are going to pop up. They're interested in politics. They didn't care before. They thought Republicans were as bad as Democrats, nobody wanted them, and they couldn't influence the political system. Now they don't.
Well, the danger, I think, of white supremacist violent extremism or any other kind of violent extremism is, of course, significant. We assess that it's a persistent, pervasive threat.
Their fears.